Okay. So in the last session, we completed up to supplier merge. We created one more supplier and we merged that supplier, right? I think just in this environment, I create like this cloud INC supplier, and we perform the merge. Now we'll see the interest invoice creation. So to create the interest invoice in case of late payments, so what setups required, how system will create the interest invoice. We'll see that. Sorry. Fine. So when I talk about the setups, almost same setups, what we do in EBS, the different levels. So the same setups we have to perform. So first we'll see the setups which are required. So to enable this interest calculation for our business unit, in invoice options, we have to enable create interest invoice option. Say enable create interest invoice in invoice options. Okay, within the invoice options, we have to enable the create interest invoice checkbox. That means, so we are enabling interest invoice creation for specific business unit. Invoice options at BU level, right? So BU level. And for which supplier, the interest should get calculated if we are going to make the late payments. For that specific suppliers, we have to enable the interest. Basically, in EBS case, we enable create interest invoice option for supplier, but in the Fusion not at supplier level. We can set for specific site also. Site level, they give an option to set interest invoice calculation. Okay, calculation in the sense here it's all about creation, interest invoice creation at site level. That is the difference when you compare with EBS. In EBS, for entire supplier level we set, but in the Fusion it is available at site level. Say set create interest invoice for supplier site, specific supplier site. After that we have to create the interest rates. Okay, so primarily these are the three setups we have to perform. In case of EBS, so we set these invoice related interest invoice related controls at payable options. In payables, we can find the tab called as interest. Under the tab, we'll enable interest and will provide the relevant accounts, and will provide the minimum interest amount, rest of information. But here, so that they move to invoice options since we don't have any payable options. Fine. So we'll complete these setups, required setups. After that, what we'll do is, if you want to create the interest invoice, definitely we need invoice which is past due. Okay. For our testing purpose, we'll create an invoice with 1st June. With the 1st June, we'll create an invoice. So create invoice with say $50,000, and let's use immediate payment terms. Okay, we'll use the payment terms as a immediate. We'll create with this date and we'll use the payment terms as immediate, so that system will calculate the due date as a 1st June itself, and we'll try to make the payment with the today date, and it has to be paid on 1st June, but we are going to pay today. For this time gap, system will calculate the interest because we are going to complete these setups. Say once you create, and what we have to do, you have to make the payment, right? Process payment for invoice. So when you process the payment for invoice, system will identify it as a late payment, and it will calculate the interest and it will create interest invoice. System creates interest invoice. Done. So these are the setups to test this interest invoice creation. Okay, this is a case we are taking. Okay, we are going to create invoice with the past date as well as past due invoice, and we'll process and we'll see the automatic interest invoice creation. Fine. First, go to invoice options. Go to our project, implementation project, and search for invoice options. So manage implementation projects, Cloud INC. Go to invoice options, manage invoice options. Click on go to task icon. So within the invoice options, we can find the section related to interest invoice. Here we have a interest section. So enable create interest invoice and specify interest expense account. So when system creates, it has to derive the debit account. Just search for interest term. So you can go with this advanced search option. If you find the relevant account, okay, or else you may use any one of the random account. So interest payable we have, like we need interest expense account. No issues, you can pick this any one of the account. Basically that should be interest expense account. Here seems to we don't have that account availability in the value set. So minimum interest amount. The minimum interest amount should be say $10. So done. We enabled interest invoice creation for this business unit. So save and close. What is the next step? We have to specify for which supplier side interest calculation is applicable in case of late payment. So go to our supplier, go to navigator, under procurement, go to supplier's task and find our supplier. We created supplier called as Cloud INC. Okay. Manage suppliers, Cloud INC. So this is how I given the name in the previous environment. I think we created as a just Cloud INC. No issues, we'll edit it now. Now we have to go to the supplier site. Go to sites, click on edit. Okay, and this is the supplier site, site 1. Go to invoicing tab and scroll little down. Okay, in terms section you can find an option called as create interest invoice, set to yes. Okay, create interest invoice, set to yes, and say save and close. Now we have to define the interest rates. So to create the interest rates, navigate to project, go to implementation project, or else directly from FSM homepage also we can do that. Search for interest rates. Manage interest rates. Click on go to task icon. So here just click on add. You can specify the time frame for which period which rate is applicable. We'll say from Jan 1st to July 31st. Rate is say 15% interest is applicable. Here we given the percentage. Say save and close. We done with the required setups. Now we'll go and create an invoice with the past date so that will support this interest invoice calculation, creation, testing. Right. So create invoice. Go to invoice workbench. So under payables we have a task called as invoices, and go to task list, say create invoice. So we know this is again new environment which we configured the same setups. So here we don't have default business unit profile option setup, so we have to select it manually. So Cloud INC US business unit, our supplier is Cloud INC. You can just enter invoice number, invoice amount, just whatever we discussed will go accordingly. Say $50,000, and just select the date. You can select date as a 1st June. So term date also change to 1st June. So this payment term immediate will be calculated from the 1st June itself. Enter the line amount, $50,000. System is defaulting distribution set from supplier site. You can accept the same and validate under account, or else you can ignore the accounting this stage. Fine. So you may submit for accounting, may not. Okay, we created invoice. Now we are going to make the payment for the invoice. So save and close, or you can just go with the pay in full option. Anyway, we'll switch to payment workbench. Expand this, just click on this line. Go to payments task. It will take us to payment workbench, or you can call as payment work area. Payments work area. Go to task list. Say create payment. Select our business unit, Cloud INC US business unit. Select our supplier. And select our bank account. And the payment process profile. Payment document. So you are going to make the payment today. Select invoice, for which invoice we want to process the payment. Only one invoice we have. Select and say apply. Now system will identify for this supplier site related invoices interest is applicable in case of late payment. Just say OK. Now you could see interest is calculated. Okay, $354.17. The total amount which you are going to pay is actual amount plus interest amount. You can say save and close. For the interest amount, we know like automatically system will create interest invoice, and with that interest invoice amount, the same invoice it will select for the payment along with the actual invoice, right? Now we can go and find the interest invoice which system created for interest amount. So here you could see the recent in last 24 hours, two invoices are created. You can click on that number. You could see interest invoice. The same number it taken as a prefix and it added a suffix as int, interest invoice 1 with $354. So fully paid. This also paid along with the standard invoice. Right done. So that's all about interest invoice creation. When you compare with EBS, there is no difference. Only the point is here we got an option to set interest invoice creation is applicable for specific site or not. In case of EBS, only the option is entire site supplier level we can set. There is no option to set at site level. Now we'll see the recurring invoice. Okay, the recurring invoice functionality here we can see through spreadsheet. Okay, the recurring invoice just here. In case of EBS, what we do, we can create the recurring invoice template. From the template, whenever you need invoice, you can go and give the number. Okay, how many recurring invoices you require, you can give number and you can say submit. That's how system will create invoice automatically, recurring invoice automatically. But here we have a recurring invoice functionality through spreadsheet. So it's a very simple process. We know like in EBS also what setups we require. We require special calendar for recurring invoice. Then we'll create template. From template we'll generate the recurring invoices. Here same special calendar in Fusion we are calling as payables calendar. First we'll go and create the payables calendar for recurring invoice. Then we'll prepare the data in the spreadsheet and you can create the recurring invoice. We'll see that. So create payables calendar for recurring invoice. So create recurring invoices from spreadsheet. Nothing but ADF DI. Okay. Application Desktop Framework Data Integrator. Actually ADF stands for Application Development Framework, but here it's not applicable related to this function. Application Desktop Framework Data Integrator. Fine. We'll go and create the payables calendar for recurring invoice. You have to go to setups. Better we can open one more tab to manage the setups. The other tab we can use to test the process. Instead of moving from the setup section to transaction part, we can have a different tabs. Go to project. Search for the task called as payables calendars. So task name is manage payables calendars. Just click on go to task icon. Ignore the message. Say create. Cloud INC recurring. It is not taking accepting limited characters, no issues. That you can write here. And calendar type already we discussed as a part of withholding tax configuration. So this calendar type is classified to with the two values. One is payment terms, other one is general purpose. Now the recurring invoice or withholding tax or any other purpose other than payment terms, we have to choose general purpose only. Here you can select the start date. You can take the start date for this as a 1st Jan and done. Period frequency is monthly. Okay. Now you can say generate periods. Say save and close. Say done. We created payables calendar. Now we'll go and create the recurring invoices through spreadsheet. Go to invoice workbench. If you go to invoice workbench, within the invoice workbench, you can find the task called as create recurring invoices. Create recurring invoices. Just click on this task. It will take us to the spreadsheet ADFDA function. So even if you want to create recurring invoice also, before that you have to download the ADFDI file and you have to install in the client machine. Say okay. Say connect and provide login credentials to instance so that this sheet can be connected to the instance with the same permissions. Say skip. Version check is not required. And you see that message, say okay, skip. So select our business unit, Cloud INC business unit. You can give the invoice number, which is only used for prefix. I am giving as RI. This will take as a prefix. Invoice amount, say $25,000. Select your supplier, double click and select. Okay, select site. We given site name as a site 1. Search for site 1. Say okay. And invoice currency is USD, right? And payment currency also same. And as a mandatory, you have to select the calendar, recurring invoice calendar. Double click. We given name as a Cloud INC recurring. In case of EBS, when you create the recurring invoice template, we specify the total number of periods and starting period and ending period. So here there is no, we don't need to specify. You are planning to create this recurring invoice spreadsheet for how many periods. Straight away you can give the period range. You want to create the recurring invoices from which period range? Directly you can give. Say for example from June to December or June to August. Directly you have to specify, no number specification. So directly you can specify, the same system will follow. So double click to select the period. We need recurring invoices from which period to which period. So June 18 to so the target period, like till which period you want to create recurring invoices, you can specify. Maybe say you want to create only for 2 months. So in that case we can give July as a 2 period. And this template you can just specify this information and you can submit this invoice creation, and the same template you may save on the desktop. Again, if you want to create invoices from August to December or August to till November, you can just change this dates and you can resubmit. Again system will create this. You can use as a template. Okay, done. So you can just enter the amount here, what amount you enter in the header level, $25,000. The same you can enter for line. And if you have a purchase order information, that you can specify, while system create, it will do the matching. So rest of information here you can select distribution set. For this just double click and select the distribution set. So we have a distribution set called expense. We create a distribution set with expense name. Same you can select. Rest of all the fields are optional. Right, we given the required information. Now system will create two recurring invoices. The reason we given the period range from June to July, and it will create two invoices. The invoice number starts with RI. Even in EBS also the same. Whatever the number you give in the template, that it will take as a prefix for recurring invoice creation. So we given required information. Now you can go to create invoices and say generate. Say okay. It will create recurring invoices. The same information will import into application. Okay. The number of recurring invoices created are 2. So we may refresh this navigation. This page. Fine. Go to invoice workbench. Now you can notice total 4 invoices. Even you could see in this the colors. So orange color, that indicates incomplete invoices. We have 2 because the 2 invoices which just now imported, remaining 2 invoices are completed. Fine. Just click on this number. It will display those 4 invoices here, and you could see this is a RI1, RI2. We given in the template level invoice number as RI, which system uses for prefix of the invoice numbering, and the rest of sequence is running 1, 2. So you can see validation status as not validated. You can just open the invoice, and if you want to add if you want to update this invoice with any other details, you can do it. Once we're done with that, you can submit for validation. Rest of process remain as a standard process. So validate. In the same way, you can validate the other invoice also. So this invoice is validated. Invoice number RI2 you can submit for validation. Here also we have option to validate. See that. So once you select invoice, here we have a validate tab. Just click on this validate. Without opening the invoice, you can submit for validation. That all invoices are validated. So this is how just you can use. Again, if you want to create 2 more invoices, okay, from August to September, you can change the periods and just go and say generate. If you want to change the amount, you can change any other details. You can reuse this template, but when you are working on this template, that the connection need to be established with instance. That means before you come to this, open this sheet, you have to log into the instance. Then whenever you try to open, it will ask us to log in again through this sheet connectivity, and then we can use this template multiple times, the sheet as multiple times as a template. So that's how it works. So that's all about recurring invoice. We don't see any difference when you compare. And we'll look at the third party payments. Okay, third party payments. That means we'll get invoice from one supplier, but our supplier may ask us to make the payment to other party. Okay, other party. Otherwise, only 2 parties in the business, customer and supplier. So other than supplier and customer, the other party, so other organization will involve in this payment process, that will deal with the concept called as third party payments. I will go with a simple example. So when I talk about third party, say we are here as a customer, right? Customer, and we have a supplier called as Cloud IMC. So we purchase from supplier and we'll get invoice from the supplier. So as per standard process, we have to process the payment to same supplier. But our supplier Cloud INC may inform us saying that we appointed some collection agency, so whatever you have to pay us, that you have to process to so and so collection agency or some third party. When they give that information to us or instruction to us, instead of making the payment to Cloud INC, we have to make the payment to so and so company. Okay, so to test this functionality, okay, so to test this functionality, what setups need to be done, we'll see. Okay, what setups need to be done, we'll see now. So before that, we'll talk about the case. Say we'll go and create invoice against Cloud INC. We'll create invoice with, say, $20,000. And say Cloud INC is informing us to remit, to send that payment to the collection agency whom they appointed. So you have to pay, or say we have to remit the payment. So against Cloud INC invoice, we have to remit or pay the amount to, say, Cloud INC XYZ organization. Just for everywhere we are giving Cloud INC as a prefix, that's all. Otherwise, the actual third party name is XYZ organization. That's all. So Cloud INC is informing us to make the payment to Cloud INC XYZ organization behalf of them. That's all. So we'll create invoice against this supplier, but we'll be processing the payment to this supplier. You can treat it as a supplier in system process, reality, third party, other organization. So invoice with one supplier, payment to other supplier, other organization. So that we are calling a third party payments. To implement this solution, what setups required? We'll go and see that. So first to system, the BU level, business unit level, we have to set the permissions to change the remit to supplier at the time of invoice creation and payment creation. That we can say set up invoice and payment options. We have two options, right? Invoice options and payment options. Both we have to set. So set invoice and payment options for third party payments. Okay, for third party payments. Let's go. Payments. Okay, we have to set it up. Now to execute this process, we require one more supplier. We'll create invoice with the Cloud INC. Yes, we have Cloud INC supplier, but we don't have a Cloud INC XYZ organization. Right, so we'll go and create the new supplier to support this process, to execute this process. So create new supplier. The new supplier you can create with this name. Okay, after creating this, we have to create the relationship. We have to create the relationship between these two parties, two suppliers. In the system, we have to create behalf of Cloud INC to whom we can make the payment. That we have to set up in the system as a third party relationship between these two suppliers. Say create third party relationship. That's all. Okay, first we have to set invoice and payment options to support these third party payments for our BU, and we'll go and create one more supplier and we'll create relationship between those two suppliers, and those are the setups which we have to do one time. Then we'll proceed with the transaction part. We'll create invoice against the Cloud INC. We'll be processing the payment to Cloud INC XYZ organization. System will allow that. The reason is we are creating the relationship. The relationship will allow to make the payment to other party. Okay, we'll go and see that in the system. First, we have to set up invoice options as well as payment options separately for this third party payments. Okay, so go to invoice options. Let's go to invoice options. Click on go to task icon, and in the invoice options under invoice entry section you could see one checkbox called as allow remit to supplier override for third party payments. That means when you are creating invoice creation time, you select the supplier name. What system will do is system will allow us to remit the payment, to send the payment to same supplier. But if you want to set remit to supplier as a different, you have to get give the permissions from here. Say enable allow remit to supplier override for third party payments. If you enable this checkbox, invoice creation time, you can choose different supplier as a remit to supplier from invoice supplier. Enable the checkbox and say save and close. Invoice creation time itself you can do it. And payment creation time, that is very important for us. You may ignore invoice creation time if you don't have information, but at least you have to do at payment time. So go to payment options. Here we have a checkbox called as allow pay override for third party payments. Payment creation time, by default system will use the same supplier to print the check or payment purpose. If you want to override, if you want to change payee, if the payee is going to be different from your supplier, you have to enable the checkbox. So enable these two checkboxes in the invoice options and payment option, so that we'll get a flexibility invoice creation time also. Otherwise, finally payment creation time you should change as a part of third party payments. Done. What is the next step? We have to create the new supplier just to take as a third party. So go to invoice supplier work area. So under procurement we have a supplier's task. Go to the task and go to task list. So create supplier. So Cloud INC XYZ organization. Business relationship should be spent authorized if you want to use in the transaction process, right? So create. We know how to create the supplier. So quickly we'll just go and complete it. System is showing the match results. It is matching 50% with a other existing supplier called as Cloud INC. Yes, that is fine. Say ignore match results and create as a new supplier. Click on this tab. And we created profile, system created profile based on the information we given. Now we can go and create the address. So Cloud INC address, select supplier country, and specify the purpose. So this is for ordering under remit, or else you may select only remit, because this supplier we are not going to procure anything. We are not going to place purchase order, only for the payment purpose. Ordering also not required. You may ignore it if you want. Done. Say save and close. We created address for this supplier. Now we have to create site against this address. Go to sites and say create. Select address. The same system will default as a site name. You can change the site name to XYZ site. Just you can write XYZ, that would be enough. And now save it, so that below tabs will be open. You have to set the default invoice currency and payment currency, and go to site assignments. Click on auto create assignments. So the current user has a privileges to which BU as a procurement agent. The BU will get defaulted, and save up to this task. Then go to payments and set any one of the payment method as a default method. We may set check as a default. Done. Now we have a new supplier ready. So submit. The next step. Now we have two suppliers, Cloud INC and Cloud INC XYZ organization. Between those two suppliers, we have to make the third party relationship. If you want to make the third party relationship, you have to do from which supplier. It's very simple. You are creating invoice against which supplier, you have to go to that supplier. From that supplier, you can specify behalf of that supplier, the payment can be remitted to which supplier. So you have to go to supplier against which supplier we are creating invoice we are going to create against Cloud INC. Now you have to go to Cloud INC supplier to complete this relationship. Go to task list, select manage suppliers, search for Cloud INC supplier. The first one, right? Just click on edit. Go to sites, click on edit, go to invoicing section, scroll little down. The bottom you could see third party payment relationships, supplier site level. Okay, supplier site level, we are navigating to invoicing tab. So earlier interest invoice case also, here only we selected create interest invoice as a yes. Okay, click on create, click on add. So if you have invoice with this supplier, this Cloud INC, okay, that can be remitted, that invoice related payment can be remitted to which supplier you have to select. If you have invoice with a Cloud INC supplier, that can be remitted to Cloud INC XYZ organization. Just specify the address from date. Done. The same way, if XYZ, if you have invoice with the Cloud INC, that can be the payment can be remitted to other supplier also. Say you may have multiple collection agencies. Okay, being a supplier may appoint multiple collection agencies. They inform us just if not XYZ, ABC organization. In that case, the ABC organization also you can add here. So when you are remitting the payment, you can remit to XYZ or ABC. Right? This is quite common practice which you see for some organizations. Done. So we created third-party relationship between Cloud INC and Cloud INC XYZ organization. Done. Now we'll go and create invoice against the Cloud INC. Then system will allow us to remit that Cloud INC invoice payment to XYZ organization. You'll see that. So go to invoice workbench. So go to task list. Say create invoice. So Cloud INC. Supplier is Cloud INC. Here we are creating invoice against the Cloud INC, right? Find provide invoice number, say 2. As we discussed, invoice amount is $20,000. Enter line amount. Okay. Now go to invoice actions and go to manage installments. So we enabled one checkbox called as override third party payments in the invoice options. So because of that option, system is opening this field. Otherwise, you don't open this third party section. This section you don't find here if you don't enable for the specific BU. So here you can specify remit to supplier. Invoice supplier is Cloud INC. Remit to supplier is Cloud INC XYZ organization. You can select here. So this is the option system will open because of whatever we selected in the invoice options, the checkbox. Then say save and close. Okay. Now you can validate this invoice. Validated. So accounting is not mandatory, right? So just to make the payment, accounting is not mandatory, right? Now you can switch to payments.
This relationship is valid only for this payment?
Only not for this payment. So you no need to select invoice creation time. Payment creation time you can select remit to, because in the payment options also you enabled. You set the provision as for this business unit when we are making the payment. So payee can be different, not only for this invoice. Relationship is specific to these two parties. Only between these two it is applicable. If I select other supplier, until unless I create third party relationship for that supplier, we cannot process third party payments. This is only limited to these two suppliers, only two definitions. Okay. I'll just point that at the time of payment. Select our business unit. Now if I select Cloud INC supplier, then only the relationship is applicable. If I select other supplier, system won't allow us to override. You can see here system will be adding based on the supplier selection. I'll go and select our supplier. For only the supplier it will open payee name here. I'll select Cloud INC. Now we'll see what system will do. It will add the field called as payee. Why? For this supplier we added third party relationship. So that is the reason it is opening. And as well as for this, primarily that is the reason. And before that, system will validate for this business unit in the payment option the checkbox is enabled or not. If you are not enabling the payment option, even if you are setting for your supplier, there is no meaning in that. Fine. So here you can override. So you are making the payment to this supplier, but you want to print and send the check to this supplier. Payee is different from invoice supplier, payment supplier or else. Okay. It works only with this supplier. If you go with other supplier, you cannot select payee until unless you create relationship and you set up this invoice and the payment option level. At least you have to set as a mandatory. Invoice creation time, and that is not mandatory. That is just for information. So as a part of invoice record, that information you can capture into report generation, which will give you the information for that invoice who is the remitter supplier. That's all. So disbursement bank account and cloud, and the rest of process remains same. Only the point we have to understand here, we can override the payee because of third party relationship which these two suppliers has, or these two parties has. So now we'll be selecting the invoice. Second invoice, right? Say save and close. So this is all about how we can process the third party payments and what are the required setups to execute the third party payments. So So now we'll look at cross-currency payments process. That means we'll create invoice in one currency and we'll be processing the payment in the different currency. In case of EBS, the cross-currency payments are not possible in payables, but cross-currency receipts we are able to process. Right, in the receivables, cross-currency receipts we can do, but not cross-currency payments in the payables. But in the fusion, as a part of accounts payables, this functionality they given, we can process the cross currency payments. That means invoice in one currency, payment in the different currency. Fine. So when you look at the setups, okay, when you look at the setups, I think already we done with the foreign currency invoice and payment, right? I think no, we did it. Yes, we done. Right, foreign currency invoice and payment. We tested. The same setups will support. Okay, the same setups will support for this concept also. But anyway, just will go through the same setups. Okay, so let me just list out the setups. So in case of okay, that we'll leave it. So for that, what we have to do is cross currency payments means that means invoice in one currency, payment in the different currency. So let's take the same example here. Say we'll go and create invoice in say USD. Create invoice in USD, but make the payment in foreign currency, that is INR. This we call as cross currency payments. To support this functionality, what setups we have to complete? We have to make sure that daily rates are available between these two currencies. Say create or define daily rates. After that, we have to make sure that what are the bank account we are going to use for these payments, that is a multi-currency account. So even in case of foreign currency payments also we did the same. The same is required for cross currency payments also. Enable bank account as multi-currency account. So as a this account is allowed for multi-currency related payments. We have to enable the checkbox. So these two setups will support for this process. They give an inbuilt functionality, so no additional configuration is required. So already we just given the accounts in the common options. There are specific accounts related to realized gain and loss accounts, which will be resulting in any foreign currency related payment process. That can be foreign currency invoice or payment or cross currency payments, anything. Fine, we'll just go and see that. First we'll go and complete these two setups. So we know when we talk about daily rates, those we can create from spreadsheet only. And how to enable the multi-currency account, that already we have seen in case of foreign currency payments, but again we'll go and do it. So here search for the task called as daily rates. Sorry, daily rates. So we can create the rates from spreadsheet, right? So manage daily rates. Go to daily rates tab. So create in spreadsheet. So connect, provide login credentials. If you see client and server version check, not required. The checking is not required. Directly you can say skip. We don't want to check it. So from currency and to currency, say USD. Anyway, it will create inverse rate. You can give INR to USD as to USD to INR. Rate type is corporate. From date. So today's date, June 18 18. The same date you can take as a 2 date also. We need for just 1 day. The rate is say 67. Go to create daily rates and say submit. It will create inverse rate automatically. Then you can say okay and close the sheet. Not required for us. Now you can go to bank account definition page. Go to bank accounts. So when you are practicing better, you can open two tabs. One is transaction related tab. So where you will be in the sub invoice or payment workbench. The other one, which allows you to do the setups. Otherwise, after completing again, we have to take the navigation to land on those pages. Fine. So click on manage bank accounts. The account name is Cloud Inc corporate account. Right. So click on edit. And here you could see the checkbox called as multi-currency account. Just enable the checkbox. Multi-currency account. Say save and close. Now setups are ready. We'll go and create the invoice in USD. You can go to this other tab, invoices. Say create invoice. So Cloud Inc. So what we'll do is all the time when you search for the Cloud Inc, system will be displaying Cloud Inc XYZ organization also. So we'll rename the Cloud Inc XYZ organization so that when you are searching for supplier, that name won't come in the result. Otherwise, when you just search, it will open the pop-up. We have to go and select one out of that. If you can rename this, one second. You can go to profile directly. I just cancelled. Go to profile, edit. Submit. Anyway, we don't need the supplier, right? Now just search for the supplier tab out. It will pick only one supplier we have, which starts with the Cloud Inc. Done. Invoice number 3, say $10,000. Dollars we are entering. Right, so 10,000. So validate. Fine, just validate, and you can go with a painful option, or else you can directly navigate to payment workbench and you can process it. Let's move to payment workbench. Say create payment. Sorry, I forgot one point. Here you should change the you should override the payment currency. Now this invoice, it's already we created, and that system will freeze it. We'll create one more invoice. Ignore that invoice. So invoice creation time itself you have to take the decision. Or else if you have a practice all the time where, you create invoice with one currency and you'll be processing the payment in the different currency. Directly supplier site level, you can specify default invoice currency as USD, default payment currency as INR. So invoice number is I'm entering $10,000. So when you're creating the invoice creation time itself, you have to set payment currency. So here by default, the same invoice currency system will take as payment currency. If it is going to be cross currency payment, you should change it. Payment currency is INR. Done. So once you create, you cannot change it. We create invoice and validate it. After that, you cannot change it. So that is the reason I'm creating one more invoice. Now you can enter line amount. So $10,000. So validate invoice. Yes, with the same number. Supplier amount and all. Okay, number is different. Invoice 3 is there with the same details. Yeah, that we know. Yes. Continue. Say validate. Fine. Validated. So save and close. Now we can switch to payment workbench. Say create invoice. Create payment. Task list. Say create payment. Cloud INC business unit. Cloud INC supplier. So pay we don't want to override. Right. So go to disbursement bank account. Cloud INC. This bank account is enabled as a multi-currency account, right? So payment currency, we want to process the payment in INR. Select it. Okay, select INR, then select our payment process profile. The payment process profile is Cloud INC, right? Fine. So select payment document. So now you can go and select the invoice. So go to invoices to pay section to add it. So here we selected payment currency as INR. So how many invoices are available in the application for this business unit? Invoices are available with payment currency as INR. Only those system will display. Otherwise, all invoices means we have few other invoices also. That system won't display. Only that here the system will look at this criteria. So payment currencies INR. Now how many invoices payment currency selected INR? Those invoice only system will display here. This invoice creation time is selected payment currency as INR, system selected. We are able to make the payment. We are going to pay 6,70,000 INR to this supplier. And you can see that conversion here. In that other tab you could see in the other information you could see the details. The conversion rate it will take there. Okay. So that's how just you can process. We have a cross currency receipts and receivables. Just we don't have cross currency payments that they introduced in Fusion from very initial versions. Okay, from very initial, not only in this latest version of release 13, in 12.11 also this cross currency payments functionalities available. So that's all about cross currency payments. Now we'll see the holds. Okay, just we'll go and see how to create the hold and hold reason, how to place, how to release. This we know very well in EBS. The same we will just walk through here. Holds concept. Invoice holds. So just nothing. Just we'll create a hold for invoice and for holding reason, release reason, and we'll place and we'll test it. There are no steps to write. We'll directly proceed with that.
So hi Lakshman, this is Prasad.
Yeah.
A very quick question on payments. Can we pay invoices belong to different business units? I mean, obviously, I'm catching up on my sessions.
Yeah,
Basically,
you
this
can
is
do
my
that.
first session.
If you have access to other business units, you can pick the multiple invoice related payments. And if you want to process the payments with a single bank account, make sure that the bank account you associate with those business units, then system will allow.
All right. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, it's
Wonderful.
all about privileges. Whether being you as a user, you have access to
Yeah.
those BUs or not. Yes, you have access to those BUs. Whether the bank account, whatever the bank account you are using for process that is associated with those BUs also or not. That also we have to verify. Again, the payment process profile also will
Yeah.
a major
Yeah.
whether there you are giving the permissions or not. You can do that.
All right. I think it's a bit of a setup is
Yeah,
involved,
yeah,
isn't it?
only setup controls.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you.
fine, thanks. So now just we'll go and look into the holds creation. So search for holds. So manage invoice holds under releases. Nothing but release reasons. So we'll create one hold reason and one release reason, and with some the whatever the hold reason we are creating with that, we'll place the hold on the invoice, and we'll test it and we'll release it and we'll see that how it works. Manage invoice. We know that there are many hold names, hold reasons, release reasons Oracle provides by default, right? You could see here most of the holds are system created, which are seeded. There are few which are created by someone who is practicing on the instance. If I just click on create, will create hold reason, release reason. The type, say invoice hold reason. The invoice hold reason could be say cloud INC non-sufficient funds. So we may place hold on the invoice if funds are not available. We want to stop that invoice payment since funds are not available in the account. So when you place the hold, whether system should allow for the accounting and it's manually can be released or not, you may specify. Even if you place the hold, system should allow to perform the accounting. And since we are going to place manual as that should be released allowed to release manually. You can specify those options. So save and close. In the same way, we will create one release reason also. Okay, so what reason we may release hold? So you can say invoice release reason. You may just name it as cloud INC funds availability. If you are holding invoice because funds are not available, the other best reason to release it funds availability, right? That. Just save and close. Now we'll create an invoice and we'll place the hold and we'll see the behavior. Go to invoice workbench. Let's create invoice. We'll go and set the default BU later. Say invoice number is 5. Invoice amount is $5,000. Now the payment terms are immediate. For this invoice, due date would be today. But we don't have funds. As reality, we have to pay today, but we don't have funds in the bank account. So we want to place the hold on this invoice. So we'll just validate this invoice before that. Validate. Now it would be available to make the payment. If invoice is validated, we can just select that invoice for payment. So what we want to do is we want to place the hold on this invoice. So to place the hold on the invoice, go to invoice actions, and here we have a function called as manage holds. Click on manage holds and you can place the hold on this invoice so that this cannot be processed to next step. The hold name we given as Cloud Inc NSF, non-sufficient funds. And it says save and close. Since hold is placed on the invoice, this invoice cannot be processed for payment. The moment you place the hold, system is updating. Manual hold is placed. If you click on that, the same whatever you place, it will display. Invoice is already validated. Because of hold, system will be marking as a needs revalidation. When invoice status is needs revalidation, you cannot make the payment, right? So if you try with the pay in full, it won't allow. This action is not applicable in this stage. That's how it will just the hold will prevent the invoice payment process. And later stage, if you are just funds are available or whatever the reason you place the hold, the reason is resolved, the issue is resolved. You can go to manage holds and you can release reason why you are releasing this hold. The amount approved, funds are available, whatever you can specify. Then say okay, now system will release the hold and it will set the validation status as validated. Now this would be available to pay. This is how you can make the payment. Not required for us now to processing the payment. So this is all about holds, release reasons, release name, hold reasons and release reasons. So you can set up and you can apply wherever required. So that's all about holds. So now we'll look at supplier refund process. Okay, supplier refund process, which is more connected to prepayment. We'll go with the example and we'll discuss. Supplier refund. So here we'll go with a simple case to understand the supplier refund to test. Say we want to give some advance to supplier. In that case, what we want to do is without creating the invoice, we cannot make the payment in payables application. Because of that reason, we have to create invoice called as prepayment invoice. So create, we want to give advance. For that, we have to create invoice first, right? Create prepayment invoice. So you are creating the prepayment invoice for $25,000. So this we have to pay to the supplier. The advance we have to give to the supplier. Only the option is making the payment. Say process payment for prepayment invoice. How much will make the full payment? We never go with a partial payment for prepayment. How much we are processing as a prepayment, with that amount only we'll create invoice, right? Done. Now we created a prepayment invoice and we process a payment against prepayment invoice. Now $25,000 would be available with our supplier. Now whenever you purchase something, if our prepayment is temporary, you can adjust that amount. Say you are purchasing from your supplier for 20,000. You purchase something, you got invoice, you are entering invoice. Say create standard invoice. You purchase for 20,000. So created. Now this is open invoice amount. Outstanding amount is 20. Instead of making the payment separately, you want to use available prepayment. So in that case, you'll apply prepayment on standard invoice. How much you'll apply? 20,000. When you apply 20,000, here the 20,000 will be reduced. Whatever you pay 25, out of the 20,000 used, remaining availability amount with the supplier is 5,000. This is very normal process, very standard process in terms of how to deal with the prepayment. Now total we given $25,000 to the supplier as an advance and we adjusted 20,000 on the further purchase what we did after advance. Now remaining $5,000 available with the supplier. Say we don't want to continue with that supplier, we are not going to purchase anything going forward with the supplier. So in that scenario, we can ask that supplier to refund that amount. So if you want to record that refund, normally what we do is simply you can. So when you create the standalone invoice, standard invoice. If you see the standard invoice 20,000, the meaning is we have to pay 20,000 to supplier. If you see that any invoice with a negative amount, that is a reverse scenario. The supplier has to pay us. If you want to create the invoice with a negative sign, we use debit or credit memo. Anyway, debit memo is only for purchase returns. So that is the reason you may create credit memo. How much supplier has to pay? $5,000. So you may create credit memo with 5,000. We already tested debit and credit memo creation, but not standalone debit or credit memos. Those are correction purpose, which we raised against invoice. The debit or credit memos which we tested, those we raised against the standard invoices. But this credit memo is standalone. We are not creating this credit memo for correction. Just to address, supplier has to pay us 5,000. We are creating. Now I create credit memo with $5,000. So as per books, we can understand this 5,000 we have to get as a refund by looking at this just credit memo. When you look at this credit memo, we'll have a supplier also. The scenarios that supplier has to pay us. The supplier is liable us. Why? Refund. But before I go on to create credit memo, if I don't take any action on this invoice as per system, so the overall information I could see 5,000 is available with the supplier and 5,000 supplier has to refund. We are pointing the same prepayment, but it is presented in the two records. Now total 10,000. Okay, before you go on to create credit memo transaction in your system, which says the supplier has to refund, so you have to close this available prepayment. To close this available prepayment, normally what we'll go with the workaround process. We know there is no standard solution for supplier refunds in our application. That could be 11i or EBS, 11i or EBS release tool or Fusion. So in all the cases, we have to go with workaround. There are many practices which you can follow. I'm going with one workaround which normally we suggest to the clients. So before you open the credit memo with the 5,000, you have to close this 5,000. For that, what you can do is normally create dummy invoice. Here we'll go with the accounting logic. Create dummy invoice with the 5,000 and apply prepayment. How much available? 5,000. Apply prepayment. We are creating dummy invoice 5,000. We are applying this 5,000 against this supplier. Now that availability will become 0. That same we are opening with a credit memo. We'll create, when you see the credit memo, that means the supplier has to pay. Whenever you receive the payment, we'll create the payment record for credit memo, that is nothing but refund from the supplier. Say record payment for credit memo, or else it could be debit memo also. You may use it, but debit memo purpose is primarily purchase returns. So minus 5,000. We'll record it. It is nothing but refund from the supplier. This is how we'll handle it. When you create the dummy invoice and when you create the credit memo, we'll use the same account in the distribution. And the dummy invoice distribution account will debit, credit memo distribution account will credit. That's how it will knocked off. And that is accounting logic which need to be implemented, used. Okay, we'll see this process. Up to here, it's very standard process. Only that to manage the supplier refund as a workaround activity, we have to create dummy invoice. We have to apply rest of processes with the same amount. How much amount supplier is going to refund? Create credit memo and process the payment, which system understand, as well as we'll be selecting the payment type also refund only. We'll see that in the process. So we'll go with this process. We'll just go and complete, which is a very standard process in terms of prepayment. I think the similar case we tested. So for prepayment, right? Yes. So similar case. Additional processes, dummy invoice and application, credit memo and payment. We'll go and see that. So click on this number of invoices which you could see. From here also we have a function called as create invoice. From anywhere you can go and create. From task list you can create, or else from here. Our BU name is Cloud Inc US Business Unit. Supplier is Cloud Inc. So invoice number I am giving PP1, prepayment 1. So we discussed $25,000. Yes, $25,000 you can enter. Select type as a prepayment. And when you create invoice, prepayment invoice, we have to make sure that payment terms are immediate only. So anyway, the immediate only system is taking. So now you can go to line level, enter same amount, 25,000. The system will default prepayment account from supplier site level if available, otherwise from carbon options. And we know by default system will be marking this as a temporary prepayment. Allow prepayment application means temporary only. Alright, so you can proceed with the validation. And to test this functionalities and all, accounting anyway is not mandatory. Done. Now we'll make the payment for this prepayment. Say pay in full. Select payment process profile. Select payment document. Say submit. Now prepayment is available. The status is available. $25,000 are available with our supplier, which we processed as an advance. Done. Now say create and save and create next. Now we'll go and create the standard invoice by taking the case as we procured something from the supplier. Cloud Inc. Cloud Inc. supplier. Invoice number is 123. Say we procured for $20,000. Same you can enter at line level. Now if you want to make the payment for this, yes, you can do it, or else we can use the existing prepayment. Right, so first let's validate this invoice. So continue and say validate again. So invoice is validated. We can apply the prepayment on this invoice. Say apply prepayment. So this is all we tested already in case of prepayment, so we don't need to discuss again. Select and say apply. So 20 would be applied and 5,000 still will be available with the supplier. Availability is $5,000. 20,000 is applied. Now this invoice status you could see as a paid invoice. Submit for validation again. Accordingly, the system will generate accounting entries. It will derive the code combinations. Done. Validated. Status is paid. Payment is 20,000. Invoice amount also 20,000. Done. So this is a very standard process when you talk about prepayment. Now the 5,000 we are going to get refund, so that we have to close it first to open through credit memo. So create dummy invoice. So create Cloud Inc US Business Unit, Cloud Inc supplier. Invoice which we are creating is dummy. Amount is $5,000. So line amount also 5,000. Here we have to follow with the accounting logic. 5,000, 150. So don't use distribution set. You have to enter some supplier refund adjustment account or prepayment adjustment by referring. You can enter account which will knocked off with credit memo creation. search for any refund related adjustment account available or not. Credit card refund. This related to payables, no issues here. Normally you can use this as a prepayment adjustment account. You can have account and you can select it here. Now here you can use any one of the account. So whatever the account we are using here, same account we have to use in the credit memo also. So normal account basically we use as a prepayment adjustment account. You can use it. So now you can say validate. So apply that prepayment on remaining amount 5,000 we have, right? That amount you can apply on this dummy invoice. Apply prepayment 5,000 available. The same we are going to apply on this dummy invoice just to close it. Now we closed. The same we have to open with the credit memo, which address supplier has to pay us. Done. Say save and close. Now we have to create the credit memo. Create memo for what purpose? Refund purpose. Credit memo minus $5,000. Minus 5,000. Remove distribution set. You should use the same account which we used in the dummy invoice. The account which you have to use is prepayment adjustment account. Select same prepayment adjustment account. Since that account is not available here, I think we used refund account. Whatever the account you used over there, the same you can select. Say OK. Now see, this credit memo is very standalone. We are not creating this credit memo against the invoice. So in case of refund, we just create in this way. So validate it. It's done. Okay, just validate. Now we'll go on to say, now just by looking at this credit memo, we can understand the supplier has to refund the 5,000 amount. Say we received from the supplier now. The moment you receive, you have to record the payment as we received from the supplier the refund amount. Go to payment workbench, say create payment. So cloud IMC. Now select payment as type as a refund. Receiving from supplier. We are going to take that amount into which account? And supplier might have given check. So what is the document number, check number which we received from supplier? And go to add. So we got refund against what? This amount. Credit memo. Done. This is all about refund which we received from the supplier. So that's all about supplier refund, which is a workaround solution, right? The same we do. So just to understand how it can be done, that is a process. We're just done with that. Now we'll look at aging. Okay. So aging periods, we'll just go and create aging periods and we'll test it. So search for aging periods. Like it's all about know the age of invoice, nothing but to know the primarily past due. If you want to know current future also as possible, right? So we can create the periods are called as buckets. Accordingly, we'll be able to generate the report. The same process how we create an EBS will create and we'll do it. Cloud INC aging. So add periods, aging periods here. So here you could see that pop up. It says that the negative number what you enter, that is, I mean, it's all about. It indicates the negative and the positive will indicate it's whether past or and future due. If you enter any amount with a positive amount, that talks about past due. If you enter negative, it talks about future due. That is indication. Here what we'll do is we'll say we want to know the past due invoices which are falling under 1 to 10 days, and how that invoice information need to be displayed, under which column. Say the column in the report it should display as 1 to 10 past due. I think we don't have invoices which we have a past due. All invoices we created today only. So 11 to 20. Before we run this report, we'll create 1 or 2 invoices. No issues. So 11 to 20 past due. So 21 to 30 days past. If you want to see, for that we need separate column. 21 30 past due. Okay. So just we'll go and create invoices. We don't have any past due invoices. All the invoices we created today only. So save and create next. We'll create one more which falls under different period. Just validate it. So save and close. Now we'll go and run the report by selecting the days in period definition which we did. We don't have any favorite selection, that schedule process here. Go to schedule processes. Search for report called as payables invoice aging report. So sort invoices by trading partner, include invoice details, yes. Include supplier site also, yes. Select our aging period. Invoice, Cloud INC aging we given submit. So however we have periods, accordingly that system will display the invoice aging segregating how many are falling under 1 to 10 days past due, 11 to 20, 21 to 30. Okay, the report status is succeeded. You can see the output. Select, scroll little down. Open. So 11 to 20 days past, these invoices are falling just 6,000 and 25,000, and between 1 to 10 days past, only one invoice is falling. This is our just aging report we can generate with the help of aging periods. We created just 4 periods, 1 to 10, okay, 11 to 20, 21 to 30. So that's all about aging periods and all.
Lakshman,
Yep.
can we able to customize this report? How do we customize it?
See,
you want to?
see, simple. So customizing in the sense like you want to add additional periods, or you want to change something. What exactly your requirement according to that?
Just simple requirement, Legos based on the client, and also a couple of fields extra if I want to
Yeah,
add a couple of
you
fields
have to
extra
go
to
to
it.
that template, the format. So from where you can access the formats and all, you could see the XML formats. So these all are, because these all are XML reports, XML published reports. So you can do everything. The logo change, definitely we should do that. That is default logo, Oracle logo. We'll change the client logo, and any other information if you want to do, you can do it. When you go to the payment formats, there you could see that is a place where you can access any XML formats. You can do that. You can do that. That you can do in
Usually in R12 you copy the existing functionality. We
same
copy the standard ones and we
same
maintain
process.
same thing, right?
Same.
Okay. Okay.
Because it's not at all recommended to change anything which is a pre-defined, right? Always will just make a copy, primarily report related or anything, and that will do the modification. That will be mapping. That would come in the process. That's all. Yeah, the same we can do. Fine. It's already 7:45. So we can just wind up for today, and we'll connect tomorrow. Before that, any questions, please?